Hi there, my name is Joel Toppin, and this is my game design, Comancheria. And what I'm going to do in this video is show you how the game design has matured over the last few months. We demonstrated it publicly at the Consum World Expo last summer, back in it was June of last year, 2014. We got a lot of feedback at GMT Weekend in October of 2014, and put a lot of work into it since the new year. And I believe that the game design is getting very, very near to final. So let's go ahead and show how this thing works. There's been a number of changes since the last video that I've shot, so let me give you a quick tour of the board. First of all, the artwork has been upgraded a little bit, but this is still playtest art. We've moved away from like a period map to something that is actually hand-drawn by yours truly. And I don't want to tell you how long it took to draw all those little rivers, but let's just say that I got a little tired of that. Anyhows, final art's going to be up to the GMT final artist, but I did pretty up the artwork to help give the final artist some direction. What I've got here is a game in progress. We've shifted some game tracks around. We have a general record track still here that needs to be made a little bit larger. So I'm going to make the 0, 1 through 3 boxes larger to accommodate more markers because there are more markers tracked on here now. The operations track, we moved it from a horizontal approach to a vertical approach. We removed numbers from the first 3 boxes to mitigate against some luck factors. Kind of temper that down a little bit. Made the markers for these tracks round in shape, and the final counter art is still to be determined, but we're getting close with that as well. The map now has room up here. I don't remember if the earlier video showed it or not, but we have spaces up here for the development cards that are revealed from a deck. These are revealed period by period. There's 4 periods in the game, and they are color coded. So right now we're in the we're actually starting the second period of the game, which is going to have yellow tops to these cards. So the next cards that come off this deck will have a yellow banner around the top, and then the appropriate dates down at the bottom of the development cards. Probably the biggest change to the game is the addition of a tech tree, if you will. I really worked on this quite a lot. Went away from it, came back to it, went away, came back to it, and finally decided, okay, let's go ahead and do this. But we've added a tech tree similar to Navajo Wars. Similar in a lot of ways to Navajo Wars. These are culture cards in the game. There are 8 different types of culture cards, and I've tailored them for the Comanche people. So you have diplomacy, horsemanship, lords of the plains, as opposed to masters of the mesas. From Navajo Wars, politics, spirituality, tactics, trade, and warfare. Most of these are going to be trade and warfare oriented. The big change to the game is we took away a number of the operations that the player can do. So the player actions that a player can do when you're taking actions with your warrior bands, it's now been reduced to 4 different things you can do. You can hunt, you can move, you can raid, or you can trade. What the culture cards are going to bring to the table are a number of new actions that you can take. For example, horsemanship level 2, you can see here I just expanded it. Husbandry action can be taken if you purchase the level 2 culture card here. Warfare, there's actually an action I have purchased earlier here in the ongoing game. Warpath action now is something that my guys can do to put down a larger number of ravage counters on settlements or hostile tribes that I'm raiding in the game. So we've added quite a lot to this. You're never going to be able to purchase all these. You have to keep there's now culture and military points in the game. Let me cover that real quick because that's a really big deal. I had not used that mechanic in this game. It's going to be very similar to Navajo Wars in one respect. If both of those markers fall to 0, you instantly lose the game. But that's pretty much the extent of the similarity with Navajo Wars. In this game, the only way you can get military points, apart from card effects, is if, as one of your headman actions, which is like elder actions for Navajo Wars, as one of your headman actions, you can convert 1 culture into 1 military point. the way headman actions work in this game, they're extremely precious, and so it's a really tough choice. Do you use that? Do you not? You can readily acquire culture points. Culture points are pretty easy to acquire in the game. It's converting them into military points that makes your military point track something you really want to pay attention to. So that's something new in the game. You do have to keep your culture points up in order to use the effect on your culture card. So you'll see level 1, level 1, level 1. I have to have at least one culture for each for these to work. If I buy a level 2 card, then I would have to have at least 2 culture points for those to work. So that's some of the new stuff that's going on in the game. One last thing I'll cover here before I'll just start pushing some things around is the history card. We moved it up to over here on the map, nearer to the enemy instruction display, because these two things, they interact quite a lot with one another. The history card, as you can see here, there are flags next to the active enemies, the potential active enemies during this historic period. So you'll see there's 2 Spanish flags there, indicating that between 1750 and 1799, Spain is in control of the West and the South. The North represents hostile tribes to the North and never receives a flag. Now, where this becomes a big deal is in the game when a war begins, we don't have raids per se like we used to. Instead, we have what we call war columns. And in fact, there's one war column on the map right now that's come out of New Mexico here. And so you can see that there is a war with a original strength of 6 that came off the instruction track here, instruction display. It came off of there, it was placed here, and it has been slowly making its way towards our rancherias. Its strength has been reduced to 4 due to attrition. So you see there are strength counters now. So let me zoom in a little bit, make this a little bit clearer. Alright, I'm going to zoom in all the way so this thing will stop auto shifting on me. There we go. You can see the war strength counter has a strength rating which is in black and then a number which is in red. The number in red there is the battle die roll modifier. So during battles, we reduced the battle mechanic down to a single die roll. It's very easy now. You don't even really have to look at a track. You roll a die, you add modifiers, and if your roll is greater than or equal to 6, you win that round of battle. This token here will impart a -2 modifier to battle, making it much less certain. Also in battle, anytime you roll an unmodified 1, player does lose that battle round. So it is never a guaranteed thing with battles. So that's kind of a cool thing. As the game progresses, the Mexicans will gain control of New Mexico and obviously Mexico proper down here. And so they'll get a Mexican flag and they'll begin using Mexican strength tokens, which have subtle differences in the way that the battle modifiers progress. Basic way of looking at it is the Mexican tokens are the battle modifier is half of its strength rounded up, whereas with the Spain, you'll see it's half rounded down. So the Mexicans get a little tougher on the Comanche. Then you'll have the Texans show up, but they're going to show up from the east. Mexico will always, once Mexico is in play, the only enemy that can come out of the south here is Mexico. And then out of the west, you'll eventually have the Americans, and Mexicans will be coming out of the west. Texans will be coming out of the east, but eventually Americans will be coming out of the west as well. And you can see that their strength tokens, they get pretty hefty. So some new stuff going on there. Let's go ahead and push some tokens around here and see how this game works. I'm going to expand the map out so you can see the whole broad picture. First thing we do in the sequence of play now is we check for war columns. There is no more flowchart for raids. We've really smoothed that mechanic out. There's no more flowchart for that. It's real simple. You simply draw from a card from a war deck. So we draw a card off the top and you look at the top portion of the card where it says war column movement. You'll see here it'll tell you that east columns from the east, blue war columns that is, would move 1 space, west columns move 1 space, and north columns move 1 space. If there was any south column on the map at this time, it would not move. There's nothing from the east or north on the map right now, but there is one for the west, so it will move one space nearer to a band and or rancheria. If they are equidistant to one another, it will target a rancheria, and if they're equidistant rancherias, it will go in alphabetic priority, meaning A before B. Enemy war columns never use dashed line connections, so those are completely ignored by the enemy, and the enemy will completely ignore rancherias that are in Palo Duro Canyon. It's invisible unless there is a card effect that stipulates otherwise. So they're just simply going to move one space nearer to Rancheria A, and then we roll a die, and we compare it to the band's, or excuse me, the war column strength of 4. And if we roll less than the strength, then the token will diminish in strength. And I rolled a 1, so we go ahead and we will take that marker and reduce it down to 3. So its strength began at 6, but it has steadily declined as it's moved out. All right, so we've checked for movement. We discard this card. Next thing we do is we pull out a second card, and now we look at the bottom portion. And the bottom portion will give you a war event that is in play so long as this card is in the war event box here on the map. So what it says here is alert pickets, no countermeasure actions. Tactics and Lords of the Plains effects are inoperative while this card is in play. What that means is that had I been in possession of Lords of the Plains cards that give you effects like harass action, I would not be able to do any of that stuff while this card is in play. Also, Tactics has some countermeasures to enemy war columns like Scout. So if I'd had that in play, this card here would keep that from happening. So there are 25 cards in the war deck, and one of them is a reshuffle, which will cause you to reshuffle and then draw anew. So this deck is constantly recycling itself. So you're going to see some of these war events all over the place. Just to give you an idea of some of the ones that we have here besides the one we drew, I'll show you the one that we used for movement. The countermeasure on that was, or the war event on that was a countermeasure action. Steal their mounts. If you spend 3 movement points in a war space, which is a space occupied by a war column, if you were to do that with one of your bands, then for each movement point spent, you can reduce the war column's strength by 1. So you could spend up to 3 movement points and wipe down its strength by stealing their horses. So there's all kinds of, some of the war events are good, some of them are bad. This one here is surrender their captives. So if you take a band in possession of a captives counter, end its movement in a war space, and then you spend all the captives counters possessed by that band, the war will end and this war will go away. The war column is simply removed. So that's just giving an idea of some of the things that are in there. There's also nasty surprises that will increase the strength of a war column, perhaps. There's some that diminish the strength of war columns. Sometimes the war column will move another couple spaces and surprise you. So there's a number of things that can happen with this, and we have completely, once again, we've completely removed the flowchart for what is basically the equivalent to enemy raids from Navajo Wars. There's no more flowchart for that now. So what we're going to do here is we've gone through the war process, and we are going to go ahead and take our first action. So after you have done your war column phase, you do operation selection. Formerly there were 3 operations that you could do: take actions, planning, and passage of time, which sound a lot like Navajo Wars, but it is different. There's a familiarity and feel, I should say, between this game and Navajo Wars, and so we've kept some of the names of operations the same. Something new that we've added is a 4th operation called culture, and that is the primary way in which you get culture points. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and take actions. So we're going to take a take actions operation, and the first thing we do with this is we select one of our 2 in-play rancherias to activate, and we will go ahead and activate Rancheria A, this one right up here. So we choose the Rancheria to activate. We flip all bands in the active Rancheria to their unfinished sides. So Rancheria A has 2 finished bands, so we're going to flip them over to their unfinished sides. The Pribo, or Chief Headman of Rancheria A, currently has a medicine rating of 2. What that means is up to 2 bands can activate here from Rancheria A. Even though I have 3 in the box, only 2 can actually activate right now because of his diminished medicine rating. So what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to take this 3-strength band, and I'm going to take some horses along with me. And I'm going to take my Mahimiana, which is the war chieftain, and we're going to go up and raid the hostile Ute tribe, which is up here. Cost 4. This band has 4 movement points. The numbers on the bottom of the band indicate to the left its strength, to the right its movement rating. So this one here you see has a movement rating of 4. We spend 1 movement point to move into this space here with a hostile tribe. We then will conduct a raid action. And so what we'll do first is we'll roll a die. We'll compare the result. I rolled a 5. We compare the result to the Mahimiana's current medicine, which is 2. If we roll less than that, we get to draw bonus tokens from the success check to come. We failed on that, so we're simply going to draw a number of tokens from the success check draw cup equal to the band's strength, which is 3. So we're going to pull 1, 2, and 3 tokens out of the cup. We reveal them, and we note the number of successes, and then we note anything other than a success. We take the success token, and it goes into the Mahimiana's success box here on his medicine track. That's going to help him during planning. We can also then take either a horse counter or a captives counter. Captives are always valuable, so we're going to go ahead and steal some captives from them. And then we place 1. No matter how many success tokens we pull, we only put 1 ravage counter during a raid on that hostile tribe. And what that does, it's kind of like putting cubes in the rated cubes box in Navajo Wars. It's going to slow up the north and keep the north from being able to do the things that you see coming up on the enemy instruction display here. Alright, so we finished the whole action. Had we drawn multiple success tokens for each success drawn, we would have been able to steal either horses or captives from the available supply and take them into possession. Okay, so now these come over here, and now we got to find out how is the enemy going to resolve these enemy APs that were drawn. So we roll a die, first of all, to find out which enemy acts, and we use their current history card to determine which of these enemies is going to act. You'll notice that the East is completely inactive at this historic time. We roll a 4, which indicates it is the West that is going to activate. That's not a good thing, because that is probably going to cause this thing to move. So that's unfortunate. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to roll a die to find out which token on the West column of the display is going to flip over. We roll a 3, which does flip a war column over finally. And then the topmost instruction gets resolved. It's going to cost 4 APs, and we have 5 to spend. So we spend all 5 of them, and we return them to the draw cup. This gets resolved and moves over. There was a remainder of 1. We spent 5 APs, and the instruction only cost 4, so we move this up 1 slot. So the enemy has saved 1 AP, which can be used by any active enemy in a future activation. So even though the West was the one that saved it, South or North could end up actually using it. Alright, so how do we resolve the war? Well, if there was no war column in play for the West, we would actually place this token into the square space here and assign it a strength marker. And so we would bring a war column into existence. But since we already have a war column in existence, it will activate and it will move. So it will move 1 space, and it will enter the space with our Rancheria, which is bad. We roll a die to consider its strength, and we roll a 1 again, which decreases its strength by 1, but the battle modifier is still there. Now we have a choice. Since it's in our Rancheria, we're pretty much in a bad position because during the next war event, we don't actually resolve anything now. It doesn't attack us yet, but we know that something else is going to happen. So what we're going to do here is we have a choice. We have 3 movement points left with this band here, but we do have our war chieftain with us. So we could take him and march him off somewhere else. We don't have to bring him back to a Rancheria. We could leave him out in open space. But I think it would be a good idea to bring the war chieftain back so he can help defend during this battle that's going to be coming up. So I think what we're going to go ahead and do is actually stop there. We do have to reset the enemy instruction display, so let me do that real quick. It's just like Navajo Wars. Okay, and even though we got 3 movement points left, and I could continue to raid here, I think that because I pulled so many success tokens out of the cup, that anything we do now is just going to cause more enemy action towards us. So let's go ahead and bring this guy home. So we'll bring him into this space here and mark him as finished, put him into the resources box. We could then activate somebody else, but there is a battle coming up. So I don't want to activate my strongest band. I'm going to use my weaker band, and instead we'll just send them out 1 movement point out of 5 to go hunt. We'll spend 3 movement points to take possession of the bison here in this space. So we collect them. So that's 4 of their 5 movement points and the last movement point to come home and mark them as finished. All right, next thing we do is we look at where the operations marker is. We could spend... We have APs stored up on this track. We could spend APs to continue activating bands, even bands that don't belong to that rancheria, bands that are in open space. That's the only way you can activate them is with APs. We're not going to do that at this time, so we're just going to go ahead and end the operation. So we note where the operations token is here on the operations track, and if there's a number there, we roll a die. And we roll a 1. If we roll less than or equal to where this is at, then we move the marker down to the bottom here, and that will trigger a mandatory decision during our next operation selection phase. We must select passage of time, and that will reset this marker back up to here, amongst other things. The thing is, once passage of time starts moving down this thing, eventually you're going to be forced into a victory check. And in a victory check, you look at the history card and you have to meet the condition on here or you lose the game. The victory objective for this period of the game is we must control 2 territories and have a rancheria in a 3rd territory. So in order to control a territory, you have to have a rancheria in that territory. So you look at the color-coded spaces here, and Upper Arkansas is all these 6 spaces here. And if you have a rancheria in there and there's no enemy piece like a tribe or a settlement, you control it. Well, right now we don't control Upper Arkansas because of this tribe up here, which is why we're trying to kill it with these ravage markers. So there's nothing we can really do about further than what we have already done to them up here. So if we can get rid of this thing here, then we will control 1 of the 2 territories. Second territory that we're in is down here in Brazos, Colorado. Right now there are 1, 2 tribes in Brazos, Colorado, so we'd have to kill all of them to control that territory. We're not in a good position to do that. Llano Estacado is these spaces here, and right now there's only 1 tribe that's not allied with us. So if we were to kill this tribe and move this rancheria into the Llano Estacado, then we would control that territory. Then all we would need is a rancheria in a 3rd territory, which is easy to achieve. So we have our work cut out for us, but the bottom line is you can only do so many passage of time ops before this starts to become a problem. All right, so that will end our operation here. We go to the cleanup phase. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to relinquish possession of the resources that we've picked up, and we've got a lot of horses here with Rancheria A, and we have 2 bands that continue to be marked as finished. We don't flip them over. They're just going to stay like that for now. So this is really unfortunate. I wanted to do a planning operation because with all these success tokens in here, a planning operation would have been really useful, but alas, it's not going to happen. So we will be forced into a passage of time on our next operation. Next thing we do in the cleanup phase is we roll a die, and we can, for each rancheria that has finished bands in it. So we roll for Rancheria A, and we roll a 4, which is greater than the number of finished bands, so nothing happens there. Had we rolled less than or equal to, 1 enemy instruction will be triggered for free. So we dodge that bullet. The bottom line is the more bands you activate, the more active the enemy will be. So now next thing we do is we draw a success token out of the success draw cup, and if we roll, we reveal a success chit, then nothing happens. It goes back in the cup. But if we roll enemy APs, they go in here. We determine an enemy, and this time it's going to be the south. We rolled a 6, which is the south. So they're going to actually spend the 2 APs. So we determine which southern token flips over, and it'll be the topmost one. We rolled a 1. Uh-oh. Now, there's a war token at the top, which only costs 3. We have 2 saved up here, but there's still 1 on the track, so that gets spent. This gets returned to the draw cup, and guess what? We have a war column now for the south in play, and that begins down here and gets strength token equal to the strength of this marker plus 1 for every settlement it has in play to a maximum strength of 8. So this one is going to have a strength of 4 because there is 1 southern settlement in the Rio Grande area. So that's going to start moving up here, and we'll probably end up targeting Rancheria B. All right, so that's the end of the Operation Cleanup phase. We come back to the War Event phase, and we discard the active event. And then we go ahead and pull up a war card, check for movement. And what do you know? Nothing moves for the west. So if this thing had not been triggered, it would have been sitting outside here, but alas, it's still parked where our Rancheria is. So that's still going to cause a battle. The south is going to move 1 space. So they're going to come up here. We roll a 2, so its strength is going to decrease. Right, we discard the card, we check for an event, and we have bad intel. Increase the strength of the lowest strength war column by +2. No! Well, that's going to radically change things because the weakest band is the one that's parked with us. So our scout reports were inaccurate, and the strength is going to go up and cause the battle modifier to increase. Oh no. All right, so now we check to see is any of these war columns in the same space as an allied tribe. Okay, that's a tribe that's marked with an ally marker, or a rancheria or a band. This one down here is marked with a tribe, but that tribe's not an ally, so we ignore that. They don't. War columns don't attack other tribes that aren't allied with you. They get removed through a subjugate mechanic up here on the enemy instruction display. There's subjugate instructions that remove tribes, so that's handled through another way. All right, so what we're going to do here then is we're going to take this battle. We're going to have a battle here between Rancheria A and the war column here that has a modifier -2. And we have a choice. We can fight a series of rounds of battle. If we do that and we win, we only lose 1 military point. But we'd have to win 4 times before this thing is over with. So we're making a minimum of 4 die rolls. It could be pretty bloody. Or we could take a 2 military point loss. Now, right now we only have 2 military points and only 2 culture points for that matter. So if we were to take another, say I took the 2 military point loss, we'd be down to 0. If I take any more military points, it will wipe out culture by 2. Once you're down to 0 on one of these markers and you take another hit, then it goes off of the other marker on a 2-for-1 basis, just like Navajo Wars. So that would be putting us in a very precarious situation. So I think what we're going to go ahead and do here then is we're going to fight a battle, which means we lose 1 military point because they found our Rancheria. If they encountered a band instead of our Rancheria, then there would not have been a military point loss. So there is something to be said about leaving bands out in blocking positions. So maybe I should have done that with our Mahimiana. But the reason I didn't, because we didn't take guns with them. So what we're going to do is we're going to select one of our bands from the Rancheria. We're going to equip him with whatever resources from the resources box that we want, including a Mahimiana, our war chieftain. And this is the guys that's going to fight the battle. So let's just go ahead and bring them out here so it's easy to see. And let's zoom in so it's easy to see everything. All right, zoomed in all the way so it's nice and big. We'll spread our markers out. So here's what Guns does for us. Guns allows us to roll 2 dice and we select the best one. So that'll help perhaps keep us from rolling an auto lose with a 1. We roll die. We're going to add 1 for our for each strength in the band. So he's going to get a +3, plus 1 more for having the war chieftain with us. And then because we have the horsemanship level 1 card in play, culture card in play, we get +1 modifier for having a horse. So here we go. So he's going to be +3, 4, 5. We're +5. We're sitting really good. It's that modifier there that's so nasty. And then the guns allows us to roll twice and select the best roll. So, all right, we rolled a 1 and a 4, so the guns bailed us out there. The 4 becomes a 2 because of this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we rolled enough to diminish its strength by 1. And then pretty much from here on out, I think we're going to be safe. All right, we go another round, roll 2 dice. Our best roll here was a 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 again. So pretty much unless we roll snake eyes, we're going to win this thing. Roll 2 again. All right. And one more time. All right, so the guns really did bail us out. And so this thing gets deleted. It goes down to 0, and this... Go ahead and zoom back out on the map here. This goes back to the bottommost space of its column here on the table. All right. Can you lose guns? Yes, you can. There are a number of effects that will cause you to lose those guns. They're very difficult to acquire. And you notice I only have 1 guns token between all these bands and 2 rancherias. So they're not easy to get. When you get them, they really do help. But it's not guaranteed. There are events that will cause you to lose those, as well as losing a battle can cause you to lose them. So nothing's ever quite certain in this game. All right, so the battle is done. He does maintain possession of all of those resources, but he's not marked as finished. Now, had I used one of the finished bands have a diminished battle capability. So that's why I chose to use the unfinished band, and a very, very strong one at that. So it was our good fortune that we had a very powerful band situated there with firearms ready to receive that war column. All right, so that's the end of that, and we can move on then to our forced operation, Passage of Time. All right, what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to stop the video at this time, and I'll do another video to show you what Passage of Time will look like. Thank you for taking a look at this. This gives you a pretty good idea of the flow of the game. A planning operation, which we didn't get into this time, it hasn't changed much since the last video that I presented to you, except that success tokens in here, what happens is, this is how you increase the medicine of your headman. What would happen during planning is that 1 success token would go into here, another one would come over to the operations track, and then this guy would go up 1 for each marker that goes over to the operations track. So you keep doing this until you run out of success tokens in the Mahimiana's box. And then for every success token up here in the Paribo's box, this is called a shakedown dance, by the way, the medicine will increase for the Paribo. These are gifts of war spoils to the elder of the tribe. So his medicine, his prestige goes up as those under him do well. And what you can then do during the headman actions is each Paribo only can do headman actions. So the Mahimianas don't do anything during planning. Only the Paribos can. So you have a choice then. You can either do 1 guaranteed successful headman action, or you can take the chance of doing more than 1 successful action with a Paribo by rolling against his medicine. So if I were to take a chance with this Paribo, for example, if he had a rating of 5, and I roll a die, if I roll a 4, which I did here, that's less than or equal to his medicine, I would get to do 4 headman actions with him. So that's a really cool thing to do there. If I'd rolled a 6 though, I would have been able to do no actions with him. So there's kind of a gamble going on. Once again, the higher the medicine goes, the more likely it is that that person will die of old age during a Passage of Time roll. And we'll show more about this during Passage of Time, but for now, let me just mention this, that during Passage of Time, you can take a war chieftain, a Mahimiana, that has a high medicine rating, and you can choose to retire him. What that means is you just reduce his medicine down to 0, and then you set the Paribo of that rancheria, you set his medicine to equal what the Mahimiana was. So in this case, what I would do is if I wanted to retire this guy, I'd move him down to 0, and I'd move this guy down to 4. Now, he dropped in medicine, but he's safe from death this particular Passage of Time. So that's a good way to pass on the legacy. Basically, the war chieftain retires and he becomes the new Paraibo of that particular rancheria. And then for the guy that goes down to 0, you roll a die, you have the result rounded down, and that's what his starting medicine is. Now, because I have spirituality level 1, when I determine that new medicine rating, I get to roll 2 dice and choose the best die roll. So there's some new things going on with planning as well in the game. So, all right. So I'm Joel Toppin. That's just another sneak peek of what to expect from Comancheria. It's up on P500. The game is very near to being done. It does require some more pre-orders. We got to get up around 750 orders before we can get a production slot. So if you like what you saw here, please go to gmtgames.com and place your order for Comancheria. Solitaire game that will take you into the history of the Comanche Nation from 1875. So thank you very much for watching.